Hello, fellow Marvel Rivalers. My name is KarQ. Welcome to another week of Marvel Rivals Reddit readings, questions, discussions, memes, and all the good stuff. Let's get it started. All right, before we get started, here's the thing. I had to, because this person, most upvoted post from 12 hours ago, was tired of it. 22,000 upvote. Mr. Incredible and him are telling you guys to shut the fuck up. Here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. And it's a picture of the thing. That's the joke. Yes, I explained it to you out loud. I'm not tired of the joke yet, but I'm definitely starting to skip it. I'll tell you that much. But I mean, if you guys want to comment, here's the thing in the comments, knock yourself out. I just thought that was pretty funny. The next post was Loki Positioning 101, 11,000 upvotes. You know the funniest thing about Loki posts on this Reddit is every Loki main jerks themselves off. They're like, oh, thank you, fellow Loki. Ah, yes, Loki, because they're all mischievous and they all think they're each other. But you can never be me, because I'm also a Loki main. Amazing presentation, my fellow Loki. This was fun and really insightful. Good job, Loki. Thank you, mortal. Ha 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 ha. Not up to anything today, dear god of mischief and trickery. Ha ha, just educating my fellow variants. I knew it. They're all jorking it. Anyways, let's take a look at these Loki positioning things. I actually have like 40 hours of Loki. I'm a Lord Loki as well. I play him around mid-celestial, and let's see if I agree or disagree with this. Here we go. Salutations, mortal. I am Loki, king of Asgard. Today, I will teach you about clone positioning. Damn, this guy's doing it like a PowerPoint presentation. I haven't seen the show, by the way. I watched like 20 minutes of it, and I got bored, and this was like 2 years ago when it came out. But now that I main Loki in Marvel Rivals, maybe I'll actually give the show another shot. Everybody keeps telling me it's actually good. Did you guys watch it? Factors that influence clone positioning. Before we start, let's understand what influence clone positioning. They could be A, map locations, B, where your team and enemy position, C, situations like pushing the objective, defending the points, or D, the types of characters your enemies or teams are using, like divers or flankers. So far, so good. I agree with everything they're saying. The basics of low-key positioning. Number 1, pushing the objective. You want to first use your invisibility to position your first clone, and then place your second clone behind your tank and, if possible, away from enemy sight. Reason for using invisibility for clones is you need one clone to escape or save your enemies with your regeneration domain. Don't hyperfixate the position when pushing. Always place them behind the tank and away from enemies to shoot at. I agree with like 80% of this. First, the idea of using your invisibility to position your first clone is generally correct. Sometimes if you can recognize the comp they're running, like they're instantly running Venom Spider-Man, you may need the stealth clone, but generally speaking, you should be using that one as your first clone, and then again, activating your second one, which means you're still storing one to be able to use in a pinch for that regeneration domain. That is a good general rule of thumb. Not always a hard and fast rule, and it's one of the reasons why I stay away from absolutes, like always place them behind tank. That's not always true. But in general, this is fine. Keeping one to escape or save it, but like if you can read the situation where you don't need it or you already used the regeneration domain, then you can obviously just dump both clones. The bigger rule of thumb to remember with Loki is that every time you don't have 2 copies available, or at least if you don't have one of the clones available, you're losing 33% of your output. You're allowed to have 2 clones and then you yourself, assuming each is 33% of your output. If you're missing a clone, just imagine losing 33% of your value. That's a lot. 33% is crazy. So having higher clone uptime is better, and don't super hyper fixate on the positioning. That's a good one that he wrote right here. But then the always place behind tank is not necessarily true. That's a part I disagree with. And then away from enemies to shoot at. Sometimes you can actually offer your clone to body block and to eat some stuff for your teammates, which is why that's the only caveat I would give you. All right, the next slide here, they say there's 3 types of clone positioning. Number 1, the firing squad, where they're kind of all in the same, like in a similar spot, and they aim at the same person. The triangular formation, where you kind of, you know, split up like a triangle. The straight line, or the high ground kind of triangle, and they say this one's recommended. This is generally pretty good. I think the better advanced version of this is to understand when to use each variation. So for me, firing squad and straight line works in what I call the neutral. Think of like defending Tokyo 2099 or like the Spider Island. If it's a straight long choke point, I don't get fancy with the clones. I just want high clone uptime, keep them in a straight line, and just fire and spam and build your ultimate. Your ultimate, the copy, is like one of the best in the game. So if you waste time trying to do like, you know, fancy clone positioning, the map and the game state changes very often, in which like those fancy clones on super high ground, it's good line of sight for like 2 seconds, and when the fight moves, it's already like dead value. So I like keeping it along the choke, hopefully that in a spot where I recognize they can't break them. Sometimes it's okay, but you just want to farm your ultimate. So I usually open with firing squad or straight line for most beginnings of the game, and then when team fights break out on the point on this map, for example, on Wakanda, then triangle formation's good. I wouldn't position it here. Sometimes I put one up here. There's like a high ground on the top left that you could put it on. Triangle formation's good, and then high ground is also good if you can dynamically do it. If you know the fight's taking place in one central area, then these two are good. So these two long choke points in the neutral where people are kind of poking and feeling each other out, seeing where teams want to move, and then the triangle / high ground one when the team fight breaks out in one central point. But this is correct. Oh, they actually explained it here. All right, straight line. This is highly recommended if you and your team are trying to push. Use your invisibility and place one clone, then place another clone behind your tank. Again, this behind your tank thing is not always necessarily true. The reason to use invisibility is you must always save one clone for either escaping or emergency runes to save your team. If you use your E often, it will be a problem for you. E on PC is the one where you place the clone down. I don't know what that is on console, but I got you console players. A lot of console players are like, oh my God, I hate it when YouTubers and content creators always reference the ability of shift, V, F, E. I don't know what that is on my buttons. I got you. Don't worry. I'll try my best to tell you what the ability name is, and you find the associated binding, excuse me. So you always place the clones from behind the tank and away from enemies' line of sight so they'll destroy it less likely. I explained myself earlier how that's not always true, but generally it's okay. Firing squad. This is also a good position if you want to increase the amount of damage / heal. If you can, do it on the high ground to make it harder for enemies to attack, but it has its downfalls if you use Moon Knight, as he can bounce his attacks with your clones, so be cautious of enemy Moon Knights. Actually, that's a very good point he brought up. So when I mentioned firing squad and the straight line, the caveats you have to be aware of is Moon Knight. If they have a Moon Knight, you do have to spread it out. That's a good shout out. I totally forgot. And the other big counter for Loki is Bucky ultimates. If he's hitting the agains and the, what do you call it? Kraken impact, but everybody calls it the again. You got to be careful with your clones. Okay, the triangle formation. This can also be a good position if you're trying to defend points. Very good against Doctor Strange and Magneto, who love to put their shields up. That's a good shout out. You can confuse enemies too if you have another teammate DPS who likes to go high ground and shoot at enemies, but be careful. They can destroy them easily if all 6 enemies are not on the point. Use this if they're all grouped up, and then the point I mentioned earlier if they're all on the central point. Yeah, the last one, the high ground one. The best part about Loki, this is highly recommended to all Loki players, is it not only makes it harder for enemies to shoot at, it also can give you a good chance to escape with the teleport. Make sure it's behind your teammates and away from enemy line of sight, because if you put it in front, the enemies might shoot at it. It can also be useful if they have a Bucky who likes to reset for his ultimate. Pretty good so far. One thing you can also do with like the high ground ones is, generally speaking, when people see like a Loki on the high ground, they assume it's a clone, and in the middle of a team fight, they don't waste their time shooting it. If I have to TP to one of my clones on the high ground, I won't strafe like a normal player. I'll pretend I'm a bot. Now, the condition is if they have a Hela or like something that can 2-tap you very quickly, you have to be careful about this play. But I do it more often than you think, and that's something to consider. You have to act like a bot, and some of you guys are like, well, I can do that, KarQ. I'm always a bot. Good for you. But for the people who are trying to get better, they're like always, they see all this advice like, you know, you always got to be moving and strafing in the game, which is true. But for Loki specifically, my gods of mischiefs in the chat and in the comments here, you can be a bot on this hero and you can get away with it way more than you think. I do it all the time in Celestial lobbies. Okay, the do's and don'ts when placing clones. Do practice understanding map locations on certain matches. Do place them out of enemies' line of sight. Again, this one's not necessarily true, because if they're out of enemy line of sight, then your clone doesn't necessarily have good line of sight of the enemies as well, or your teams. Do use your invisibility for clone positioning. This one's good. I like this one too. Don't place them in obvious spots for enemies. This one I slightly disagree with. Depends. Don't abuse your E button. Agreed. You don't want to, that's the one where like you just drop both your clones and you have none available. Also true. And don't hyper fixate on positioning, especially in chaotic battle. I also agree with this. This one's a big one. Too many people over focus on this. I had to eat dinner yesterday on my long like 10-hour Marvel Rivals stream, and I was like, I'm gonna go browse like the one of the top like 5 Loki players, one above all. I watched him and I'm like, this guy has done 0 fancy clone positions that entire game, and all he did was just consistently just drop them beside him for the firing squad or the straight line for 90% of the game, because all he wanted was just to farm the ultimate as quick as possible. That's it. And if you do that, you'll be surprised at how well or how much value you bring to your team. Okay, characters that abuse Loki clones. Moon Knight, obviously, to bounce. Worse when it's grouped, like I mentioned. That's good. Bucky can reset his Loki clones, so place them very high. Very true. Divers like Spider-Man, Black Panther, and Venom can destroy them in high ground while swinging and running in the backline. Also very true. Okay, thank you. I wish you a fun gameplay, Mortal. Yeah, this was a pretty good, like, very basic guide to get people started. This is a hard hero to play. I know I gave you guys some more advanced stuff just because I have a lot of experience with them, but this is generally a very good post by fellow Loki player, small winner 8525. Yes. Okay, next post. Who do you think is currently the weakest hero. For me personally, I think Jeff the Landshark in ranked PC only at a certain like above Celestial. That being said, I think Jeff is actually like secretly good because he's kind of niche because he's like pretty good on certain maps where you can spit them out, and B, if you play with a Luna Snow, you actually like play with the team up and you don't play healing Jeff. I think Jeff is the weakest hero if he's played like a traditional healing support, because if you're just gonna sit there and just spit on your team with the healing beam, it's not as efficient as just playing another hero like Cloak and Dagger or Luna Snow or somebody who can do that job. So you'll actually, if you watch like the #1 Jeffs or the top Jeff players, they're not playing him the way that you would assume he would be played. They're actually like doing fancy footwork, flanking as Jeff, being super annoying with the bubbles and like diving in and like being a pest and drawing aggro, drawing space by being a menace in the backline and playing with that Luna team up if possible to actually be threatening with his high DPS in the backline and very slippery body. He's played like a DPS flanker at the high end. And I think the statistics back it up. Now, objectively, everybody else will probably say Black Widow, because like I think on console, I mean console aim and everything is going to be rough in high lobbies and stuff like that, and on PC. And Black Widow's in the same boat as well, where like you kind of need the right setup. She can be played without any damage boosts, but playing it with a Mantis or like a Storm for the damage boost to hit the 250 HP threshold breakpoint is pretty solid. But it's a bit player dependent. But I've seen some very cracked Black Widows in high elo lobbies, and it's a little more player dependent, but on average probably Black Widow. But then for me personally, Jeff. So Rivals actually uploaded their hero hot list on February 17th, right before the mid-season 1.5 patch hit, to show how everybody was doing. Black Widow, like I said, unanimously probably performs the weakest. I don't know, Grandmaster probably fine of a threshold to kind of show here. Biggest sample size pool on console, it's probably even worse, 37%. And look, Jeff is actually a pretty big underperformer. I'm actually surprised Punisher. These are all the aim intensive heroes, 1, 2, and 3 for console, Jeff being the outlier, but that's because people play Jeff like normal here, where like you just get out healed in the same role on the same job by Lunas and Cloaks and stuff. We go back on PC and we look at, you know, Grandmaster, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Squirrel Girl, Jeff down here. I'm bottom 5 hero, comparatively speaking, by the win rate. I mean, you can go with any of these, but this is just an opinion, right? So who do you think is the weakest? That's just my take. Jeff, if played traditionally. But, you know, there's probably some cracked Jeffs out there that are doing it right. Don't see anyone using Mantis anymore. What happened? Mantis was my main, actually, season 0. And then season 1 came, and then they buffed the Cloak and Dagger to get a 4th dash. And then Invisible Woman came out, and people were like, holy crap, big defensive ultimates seem to be very powerful. And that naturally pushed away Adam Warlock, which pairs very well with Mantis. And then Mantis herself, her defensive ultimate isn't quite as powerful as like Invisible Woman, Cloak and Daggers, and Luna. So she kind of just fell down. But that being said, I think she's still like pretty solid and very good. A lot of people don't realize she's not there to like out heal your stupidity. She's there to enable your DPS, and it doesn't show up very much on the stat sheet. She doesn't stuff the sheet, so people will naturally be like, oh my god, stop playing Mantis, we need a healer, we need somebody with more healing, like one of those big 3 healers, or a Loki to copy one of them. So I think that hurt her play rate. But statistically speaking, I think she plays very well, and especially in ranked solo queue or competitive, because she's got high DPS and can kill things herself. And I think if we look at the stats, once again, by win rate, competitive, Mantis still doing fantastic at a 7% pick rate, and it looks like a 50%, very respectable 50% win rate. So just her popularity definitely went down comparatively speaking. Next post, WTF was NetEase thinking with Iron Man this patch? This is from 2 days ago, so this is patch 1.5, the mid-season patch. I'd rather play against Wolverine now. I am insta-banning Iron Man every match. The Unibeam buff is obscene. For the record, I'm playing healer and watching his beam melt my DPS through my entire Luna kit. Unfortunately, the buff they were talking about was Iron Man got his Unibeam buffed, but got his Gamma Unibeam team up with Hulk nerfed. The Hulk gets banned all the time, so that's why you don't see as much Iron Man, but like that's one of the reasons why Iron Man shot up to like being super, super good in season 0 when people realized the Gamma team up with Hulk made Unibeam do 220 damage per second. And I think the base Unibeam does 140 DPS, and it got buffed to 160 DPS, don't quote me on that. But right now they nerfed the Gamma from 220 to 200, which is still very high, and they improved the base Unibeam if you play it outside of Hulk. And the reason why NetEase was doing that is because they just don't want, you know, to make people only play Iron Man because the beam is so much better with the Hulk. So the person that's thinking like, oh my god, I'm insta-banning, I cannot believe this is obscene, but realistically, you're probably playing against the buffed Gamma one all the time, and that one is actually way stronger anyway, so it's not like this one is outrageous. And that being said, Iron Man got another nerf since season 1 where he sounds like an AC 130. Like, I'm not even joking, you can hear him, he's so loud. And one of the ways like a lot of flyers get away with, or a lot of Ironmans got away with crazy value, was sneaking up and getting big maximum pulses in the backline and being sneaky and like assassinating people. But you can actually hear him flank now, which is a nerf to him. Plus, hit scans got buffed this patch. Adam Morlock got buffed. And Hela got buffed, where her fall off is actually only, she does 80% of her damage at all ranges now, past 30 meters, which means she can still two-shot 250 HP heroes once again, which is something that people aren't realizing. Hela is really good again. Very good in Season 0, nerfed for beginning of Season 1, so she stopped getting banned, but now she's rebuffed, and that breakpoint change is actually pretty lethal. And I'm pretty sure the reason why I did that is to deal with also the Human Torches coming in, because he's a flyer, Storm being obscene with Iron Man. I don't think Iron Man is like that bad, to be honest with you, but yeah, that's what they were thinking. That's their thought process and what they were doing, but I think this is a pretty big overreaction. Next one, please stop forcing Vanguard mains to solo tank. This game is meant for 2-2-2. Well, that sounds familiar as an Overwatch player. It was always meant for 2-2-2 and will forever be meant for 2-2-2. Just because 1-3-2 works doesn't mean that 2-2-2 isn't infinitely better. 1-3-2 is blatant DPS propaganda. It was made so that the kiddies get to play with their toys longer. Vanguards are not boring to play. You just need to play them for more than 2 matches in order to understand them. And before I go on, they got an edit because I think some of the comments started disagreeing with them here. OP says, after some discussion and thinking, I realized that while the game is not meant for 2-2-2, I failed to see how it just simply isn't the better comp if you want to win games. With 2 tanks, you're more free to run off tanks like Cap, Venom, and Thor. You give yourself more space to work with since that's what tanks do. They're space takers. With a 1-3-2, I honestly feel like you're limited to the couple of main tanks of Strange, Mags, Groots. You can absolutely solo tank with off tanks. I've done it before in my GM lobbies, but it's just so much easier and so much more fun, subjectively, I guess, when you have 2 tanks running it down, synergizing with each other. So to say it's meant for 2-2, this is the same ideology for Overwatch. They eventually did go to this role queue, and I mean, I personally did enjoy 2-2-2, but I actually, over time, I'm also okay with like a soft roll queue, not roll queue, excuse me, roll limit. I mentioned this like very early in Rivals, where and then people kind of like try to burn me at the stake, going like, this former Overwatch player is trying to kill our fun in Rivals. And my only proposal was that we have a soft limit where it's a minimum 1, maximum 4. I said 4 to be generous, where you can literally run 1-3-2, 2-2-2. Do that so you don't have games where you literally have like 5 DPS 1 support. It gets rid of those terrible outlier compositions. In ranked, like in quick play, I think it should be completely open queue, but in ranked, I think having a minimum 1 would be kind of like a nice baseline, and then maybe go off of that, because it cuts out like 500 of the possible iterations where you can have like, you know, 3-1-2, or no, 3-1-2 is good, like 5-1 and like, you know, 1-0-5, etc., etc. In any case, 2-2-2 being infinitely better, I disagree with. It's definitely winnable with 1-3-2, and they say it's blatant propaganda, but the stats don't lie. 1-3-2 still has a pretty solid win rate at 50%, I think. It's actually the 3 support that actually have one of the lower win rates for one of the more socially acceptable team comps. That being said, I understand why he's frustrated, because I think like 2-2-2 has the best balance of people probably being happy and less frustrated, because there's a balance between all the roles. When you're playing a 1-3-2, the solo tank most likely doesn't enjoy solo tanking and they hate it. If you play triple support, any variation of that, 2-1-3 or 1-2-3, the enemy team hates it, because they're like, oh my god, it's so annoying to play against, even though like it doesn't win all the time because people are playing it in the wrong spots. Understandable. 3-1-2, very rare to play triple tank. I did it a few times, which isn't really too complained about, but the enemies may be like, damn, we can't burn through all these goddamn tanks. But all in all, they say it's not. I would disagree that it's meant for 2-2-2 at this point. I think it's just one of the few viable comps, and this is the one with the least friction. And this is still subjective. Vanguards are not boring to play. You just need to play them for more than 2 matches. Some people just don't like certain roles. Me personally, I don't like Vanguards in this game. I actually like tanking in Overwatch. I don't like tanking in this game. But you're not wrong in terms of like playing 2-2-2, you get a lot more space and a lot more freedom to work with. The biggest thing with solo tanking is you have to adjust your playstyle, and certain tanks cannot solo tank. You need to be able to play one of the ones that can do it, and your playstyle becomes infinitely more passive, which is something that tank players would hate. So I get the frustration, but you know, giving the flexibility for a couple of the other comps, totally fine by me. Okay, last one. Bro, I gotta share this awesome story about Marvel Rivals. Let's end off on a good note here. So this is my first time playing a hero shooter. I've been grinding this game every day, max like 4 hours. One day my dad catches me playing and he's like, yo, that actually looks kind of fun. Can I try? I was shook. Like, my dad's 55 and I'm 19. This is the same guy who used to side eye me for gaming all the time, and now he's asking to play with me. Wild. Turns out he's low-key become a Marvel fan. Fast forward 2 months and now we're playing Marvel Rivals together every night, grinding matches and even watching Marvel movies. Honestly, it's every guy's dream to play games with their dad, especially at this age. Every day feels like the best day of my life. We even made a deal. We'll buy every single battle pass, but no store skins or extras. Gotta stay smart with the cash, you know? My family wasn't really into the gaming before, but now every day is a blast. Long live Marvel Rivals. That's super wholesome. I miss my dad. My dad passed away when I was a teenager to ALS, and it's really nice that you get to play with somebody at that age who understands and wants to spend time with their son. That's super wholesome. One thing I would note with age is like, age is not a limit. You'd be surprised how many people play games in their 50s. And I will be that kind of dad or that person when I'm 50, 60, 70, 80. I'll be playing games my whole life growing up in this generation. But sometimes I like ask chat, how old are you guys? And I've seen some people go like, I'm 58. Or somebody the other day was like, oh, KarQ, I love your videos. Like my daughter like got into the game and like, you know, we enjoy it together. And like my first assumption is like, it's like a 7-year-old daughter. And then I was like, oh, you know, it's super cool. Like make sure they don't become like a brig. Well, when they used to say this in Overwatch as well. And I'd be like, haha, make sure they don't become a brig main. And in this game, who's like the equivalent? Haha, make sure she doesn't become a Spider-Man main. Haha. But then she's like, my daughter's 20. I'm 58. And I'm like, oh shit, my bad. But it's just a nice reminder that, you know, gaming is for everybody. And one other small story is Overwatch 7 years ago, I did a bit of coaching back in the day, and my oldest client was 78 years old. He literally paid for a 1-hour session with me to get better. And the first thing I noticed when we were on the call and I was watching his gameplay is I could hear him do this every time he pressed buttons. And I was like, this is so cute. So wholesome, because he's just like, I want to play with my grandson, but I'm not that good and I want to be better for him so like we can play together. I was like, I love gaming, man. But it was just funny because you just hear, and I'm like, you know, you don't have to like lift your finger up all the way up here for each click. It's like sort of wasting a little APM, a little bit of time. I was trying to be nice about it. It was very weird and surreal. But anyways, I just thought I'd share that. That's it for me for this week. Thanks for listening to me yap, and see you guys next week. Bye-bye.